This video topic seems to have a curse on it, so if there's a massive earthquake while I'm shooting this video, I'm just gonna pretend it's not happening. You get to watch me continue to make this video while there's an earthquake. Okay. Obviously, I can't compete in terms of production value or editing, so what I try to offer viewers is any kind of insight that they're not going to get from some other video, or at least from any video that yet exists on YouTube. I think that's going to work in this case. I'm responding in this case to specific questions about 6th degree of major scales, 6th degree of minor scales, and whether they're interchangeable or whether there's any kind of rule about whether it's required to use a major in major or to use a minor in minor. The simple answer is actually no. There's not a hard and fast rule, and the reason is that which tone you use doesn't really determine whether tonality is working correctly or not. The dominant of a major key doesn't have the 6th tone in it, or a minor key doesn't have a 6th tone in it, and the tonic also doesn't have the 6th. So from a bizarre post-20th century analytic standpoint, if you actually took the tone completely out of a non-modulating piece of tonal music, it might be easier to understand tonal function because there's one less tone distracting you that doesn't affect how the dominant either resolves to the tonic or is framed as resolving to the tonic. Of course, that's not how real music works. In real music, you have pretonal harmonies, and if you want them to seem to fit other things that are happening that are dominant or tonic in quality or function, then you probably need that 6th degree. So enough of the litmus test. If you look at early Baroque music and look at key signatures, you'll notice the key signatures often don't match modern conventions in terms of associating minor with Aeolian. In the early Baroque, it seems to be equally associated with Dorian, or about equally associated. That does change. But a consequence of that is that it seems like early Baroque minor key music has a lot of major 6th in it. That could be why. Okay, so not to tell you what to do, but if you want the music that you're writing to sound like music of a specific time and place, and you want it to conform to the conventions of a set of examples that you've identified, you want to understand and you want to know and understand what those conventions are. Early Baroque, major 6th is it's more accepted. Let's put it that way. By the mid-classical period, that's gone. You almost won't see it, or if you do see it, tell me. Put it. Give me a link in the comments section. So there's precedent in comparatively conservative tonal music for either the major or the minor 6th in minor. In major, that's not really true. You don't begin to see the minor 6th used as if it were the default or the normal reference 6th in major, at least until the late Romantic period, or until you see everything goes in the 20th century, right? So you don't see that. That's an important difference between asymmetrical interchangeability of these tones, and I'll try to explain it a little bit better here. Okay, I'm not infallible, so these are probably the correct triad notations. Okay, I do know them, but I don't always write things correctly. This is major scale with, assuming these are roots of triads, we have triads in this 1/7 here for grammatical purposes, and it's a major key because, you may quote me on this, tonality is tonicization. Tonality doesn't really begin with key signatures. It really begins with dominant function. Really? Yeah. Dominant's resolving to something. If it matches the key signature, great. But that's just kind of incidental or convenient. This dominant tonicizes this major triad. That's what makes it a major key. Over here, this dominant tonicizes this minor triad. That's what makes it a minor key. Down here, Also major, also minor. And I know, but teacher, what's going on? Don't worry. I'll explain. In this example, we have major sixth and major. In this example, we have the minor sixth and major. For here, we have the minor sixth and minor, and we have major sixth and minor. I hope I said that right. This is extremely conventional. You're all aware of the major scale, okay? You're probably, if you're watching this far into the video, you're probably already familiar with these triads and what they mostly do. This has become more conventional. This is what we associate with the classical period. This is the harmonic minor scale and chords in the harmonic minor scale. Okay. This, as I said, at one point was somewhat conventional. Okay, and it differs in this one way. We should still regard this as non-conventional, probably just for statistical reasons, but grammatically, there's nothing to prevent a tonal composer from using it as they would use this other scale, because again, this doesn't affect dominant function. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. Okay, what we do have is this. 2, 4, and 6 are affected by this because they contain that. 2, 4, and 6, you'll see, are different here to there. Okay, and these are chords that usually come before the dominant, okay, and not in between the dominant and the tonic, at least in terms of conventional grammar or what's implicit. Okay, again over here, 2, 4, and 6 are affected because they contain this tone. So it does make some important differences in terms of what else you have to work with. In terms of your tonic and dominant, it really doesn't. So using 1/6 rather than the other sixth doesn't create tonality where it doesn't exist previously, and it doesn't destroy tonality where it previously exists. It affects the flavor. How does it affect the flavor? Examples are this. Other big player after tonic and dominant is the subdominant is an important player in a lot of tonal music. You'll notice that here it's major, and so it has an affinity both with the tonic and somewhat with the dominant. They're similar except for this one potentially having that 7. Down here, no, it doesn't. It does not have quite as much affinity with the tonic as it does in this other version of major. That means that when you use the 4, it may stick out in some ways. It's different. And if you want your music to sound like Vienna in 1790, don't do this. Okay, it just doesn't. If it happened even once in Vienna in 1790, I haven't heard about it. Does it sound Slavic? I don't know. That's a separate question. But it does make 4 jump out in a way, or it can make 4 jump out in a way. It's like this chord doesn't have this thing. Over here, you don't get exactly the same thing. This third player, this 4 here, it has very great affinity to this one here, and very great contrast to the dominant. Okay, so that probably explains certain decisions that certain composers. I'm not getting into it. Okay, I'm just waiting for that earthquake. You have no idea how many takes went into this video. I spent all day on it. Am I getting interrupted again? Okay, down here I have this. It looks like a major 4. Okay, major 4 again doesn't have the same kind of affinity to this 1 that you see up here, and so the affinity between relationship of the subdominant is greatly affected by which tone you use. And so even if that doesn't, even if you're doing a kind of graphic analysis where you're using scale degrees and saying, this follows that, this follows that, it might have no effect at all. In many cases, I think it would have no effect at all on how your dots get connected, and yet it does affect the sound of music a lot. and I think that's a problem that graphic music analysis hasn't fully grappled with. And well, I can just write that, that sharp or that flat or that natural there, so that readers can see. It doesn't really describe, and that's why I love small Roman numerals. Different video. Okay. What's interesting to me though is this. There's a tone that can be used to actually put a seventh on there, so that these are more or less parallel. So they're extremely similar. Or they're basically you can take a sonority from one of these and transpose it to the other literally, as if you're playing. I don't think that's what anybody intended in the early Baroque period. But you will hear this if you listen for it, whether it's there intentionally or not in some early 20th century music. So this is not only is it different from this in terms of being major, but it has a hint of dominant function in some way. Does it really function as dominant? No, let's not go there. You will notice though, you have this in this group. You have this affinity here. You have these two diminished right next to each other. These two potential dominant next to each other. These two potential minor next to each other. This is, you see this in over here. You don't see this here, and the augmented triad always has affinity with its own inversions, so it's not all by itself in that sense. A quick word about augmented triads is if you're going to compose with them, you need to really think about what you're doing. There's no clear, consistent acoustic reason to consider them to be dissonant. They may be rougher or less rough than other things that are considered to be consonant or dissonant. They may be perceived as rootless, but in spite of the fact that that maybe they're consonant, they are used in tonal music in ways that suggest that they're dissonant. And my caution is it isn't not to use them, but don't trust augmented triads to provide dissonance automatically. You have to make sure that you have squeezed the dissonance out of them if that's the effect that you want. Figure out a way to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do. Don't trust them to do it for you. Okay. That aside, what am I forgetting? I'm forgetting important things. Oh yeah, I had notated. I was supposed to notate this one, yes, as a potential alternate. Okay. Yes. In this case, there. You got this is a potential point of confusion in using harmonic minor, and so be aware of it. Even if you're going to, whether you're going to write very conservatively and you want to avoid this, or if you want to write in some other way and exploit this, either way, be aware of it. Because of enharmonic spelling, you can put you can treat that as if it's the third, and then you get this minor alternate to there. That's unlikely to be heard as anything but an embellishment in most cases, because we're taught to default to the major. And here the minor is embellishing the major. On the other hand, down here you've got this other thing where you have this enharmonic major triad where you might otherwise expect minor triad there. I don't know. So these things are these four types of scales are different in a complex number of ways. It is worth looking at them carefully and not to consider just a arbitrary flip-flop between a major sixth and a minor sixth. You should try to figure out not only what you're trying to do, but look at how other composers have apparently tried to do that to your own satisfaction. Try to figure out what they were doing and why they were doing it. Okay, all four of these things, they do exist in tonal music. These are all four of these things are tonal. Okay, so even if you decide I'm not going to use that one, do look at it, figure out what it is, and make sure that you understand why you're using it or not using it, and really form a preference, at least within any specific composition. that's based on an intelligent consideration of these four things, instead of just saying, well, this is a convention or this is a rule or something like that. There's a lot to consider. Try to consider it as well as you can.